All right, folks. It's okay. All right. Hey, good morning or evening, afternoons, and all right. Today we're going to be reading from the introduction of First Chronicle. In a wide shade of an ageless oak tree, a mother watches her toddler discover acorn leaves and dandelions nearby. Her mother, aunts, and uncles spread the checkerboard cloth over the park table and cover it with the bowls of splatter of fried chicken, potato salad, baked beans, assorted family recipe. The clanging of the grandpa and dad horseshoes against stakes regularly pierce the air, mixes with the cheer, laugh, and shout of teenagers playing game of football. A family reunion is a Sunday afternoon filled with 4 generations of children, parents, and relatives of all sorts. Reunions are important. There are times for touching and connecting with others, branches of family tree, tracing one personal history back through time, culture, seeing physical reminder, her eyes, his nose, recalling warm tradition, knowing one genetic and relational path gives a sense of identity, heritage, and destiny. With the same high purpose, the writer of the Chronicles began his unifying work of the extensive genealogy, the traces of roots of the nation in literally family reunion from Adam onward, recounting its royal lines and the loving plans of a personal God. We read First Chronicles and gain a glimpse of God at work to his people for generations. If you are a believer, these people are your ancestors too. As you approach this part of God's Word, read their name with awe and respect and gain a new perspective. A new security and identity in your relationship with God. The previous book, 2 King, and the end of both Israel and Judah in captivity, surely the dark ages of God's people. Then, following Chronicles 1 and 2, Chronicles are originally one book written after the captivity. It summarized Israel's history, emphasizing the Jewish people's spiritual heritage in an attempt to unify the nation. The chronicler is selective in his history telling. Instead of writing an exhaustive work, he carefully weaves through the narrative, highlighting spiritual lessons and teaching moral truth. In Chronicles, the northern kingdom is virtually ignored. David's triumph, not his sin, are recalled in the attempt to give it a great prominence as the virtual center of national life. First Chronicle begins with Adam, and the 9th chapter, the writer gives us a who's who of Israel history with special emphasis on David's royal line. The rest of the book tells the stories of David, a great man of God, Israel kings who served God and laid out a plan for construction of a worship in a temple. First Chronicle is invaluable supplement of 2 Samuel, of a strong reminder of necessarily for tracing our roots and thus rediscovering our spiritual foundation. As you read First Chronicle, trace your own godly heritage. Thank God for your spiritual ancestor and recommit yourself to passing on God's truth in next generation. The purpose: unify God's people, to trace the Davidic line and to teach that genuine worship ought to be the center of individual and national life. Ezra, the author, according to Jewish tradition. Original audience, exile, who returned from captivity. Date written approximately 430 BC, recording an event that occurred from about 1000 to 960 BC. Setting: First Chronicles parallels 2 Samuel and serve as a commentary on it. Written after exile of the priestly point of view, First Chronicles emphasize the religious history of Judah and Israel. Key verse: And David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel, and that his kingdom had been highly exalted for the sake of his people Israel. Key people: David and Solomon. Places: Hebron, Jerusalem, the temple. Blueprint: genealogies of Israel. Ancestry of the nation: the tribe of Israel returned from exile in Babylon. Long list of the names of the follow present a history of God's work in the world from Adam to Zerubbabel. From these, the name remind us of stories of great faith and all the tragic failures. About most of the people named, however, we know nothing, but those who die unknown to us are known by God. God will also remember us when we die. Reign of David. David became king over all Israel. David brings the ark to Jerusalem. David military exploit. David arrangement of the building of the temple. David loved the Lord and wanted to build the temple to replace the tabernacle, but God denied his request. David's greatest contribution to the temple would not be the construction, but the preparation. We may be unable to see the result of our own labor for God in your lifetime. But David's example helps us understand that we serve God so that he will see his result, not so we will see our Israel history. Explanation and mega theme. Explanation. By telling Israel history in the genealogies and the story of the kings, the writer laid down the true spiritual foundation for the nation. God kept his promise, and we are reminded of them in the historical record of his people. Leaders, prophets, priests, and kings. Important. Israel's past performance a reliable basis for reconstructing the nation after exile, because God's promise are revealed in the Bible. We can now know God and trust in him to keep his word. If, like Israel, we would have no higher goal in life than to devote service to God, God's people. Explanation. By listing the names of the people in Israel past, God established Israel's true heritage. They were all one family of Adam, one nation in Abraham, one priesthood under Levi, and one kingdom under David. The national and the spiritual unity of the people was important to rebuilding the nation. Important. God is always faithful to his people. He protects them in every generation and provide leaders to guide them. Because God has been at work throughout the centuries. His people can trust him to work in the present. You can rely on his presence today. David the king. Explanation. The story of David's life and the relationship with God show that he was God's appointed leader. David's devotion to God, the law, the temple, true worship, the people, the justice sets the standard for what God's chosen should be like. Important. Jesus Christ came to earth as a descendant of David. One day, he will rule a king over all the earth. His strength and justice will fulfill God's ideal for king. He is our hope. He can experience God's kingdom now by giving Christ complete control of our lives. True worship. David brought the Ark of Covenant to the tabernacle at Jerusalem to restore true worship to the people. God gave the plan for the building of the temple, and David organized the priests to make worship central to all Israel. Important. The temple stood as the throne of God on earth, the place of true worship. God's true throne is in the heart of his people. When we acknowledge him as the true king over our lives, true worship takes place. The priest. God ordained the priests, the Levites, to guide the people in faithful worship according to his law. By leading the people in worship according to God's design, the priests and the Levites were an important safeguard to Israel's faith. For true worship remains central in our lives. God's people needs to take first stand to the ways of God recorded in the Bible. Today, our believers and our priests for one another, and we should encourage each other to faithful worship. All right, that is the introduction to First Chronicle. All right, thank you. Have a wonderful day. God bless.